mix it up, get in gear, go for broke, don't fear because the Level Cap Podcast is here, just in time or otherwise.
Hey, Marco.
Hey.
How are you doing today?
I'm absolutely fine, Brad. Hello, welcome to this wonderful episode of the Level Cap Podcast. I'm happy to be here. How about you?
I'm happy to be here as well.
Oh man, I'm so glad that you're here, Brad. I have missed you since the last time we recorded, which was some amount of time ago.
I think it was about this time last week, yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's
how weekly podcasts tend to go, though.
Oh, really? Weekly podcasts tend to be recorded every week?
Well, only when we're in crunch time. Usually we record. We should be a little bit ahead. But
yeah.
Anyway, we're not ahead. We're just keeping up with the pace.
Hey, technically
this is episode
we're
97.
Ahead. Yes.
Episode 97. We're planning to roll out a brand new Level Cap podcast for episode 100.
Oh, yeah. Once episode 99 happens, we literally level up and hopefully we ascend to gloryhood and get there.
It's either a level up or it's a universe reset. One of those two.
We go back to level 0. You know what? We should start calling these levels.
Yes. Marco. I need to merge Marco and Galactus. Like Marco Lactus has reset the timeline,
yes.
And a new Level Cap podcast must be started from the origin story.
Yes, me and my compatriot, the Silver Brad. I'm not sure. Silver Brad?
Silver Brad.
Brad Surfer? I'm not sure. Okay.
That sounds painful, actually.
Yeah, you surf.
No
on Brad.
Brad surfing.
No Brad surfing. Illegal, highly illegal on the Level Cap Podcast. Welcome, listener. I'm glad that you're here. Welcome. Come into our room. Come into our house. Come into our home, the Level Cap Podcast, where we have a wonderful docket for you tonight, where we'll talk about all things Level 99 games or otherwise. We have a cool segment coming up for you, which will happen just about now, because I'm about to ask Brad the wonderful question. Brad, what have you been doing this week?
Well, this last weekend, we had the Extra Life Marathon at my local game store. And as part of that, I didn't play like the whole 24-hour marathon, but I did donate a lot of games. I did do a lot of promotional work for the event. And I did go in and play Betrayal Legacy. So if you're not familiar with this is Betrayal at the House on the Hill, the Legacy Edition.
Ooh.
Yes. And it's really good. It's quite cool. I'm not going to spoil anything for you, but I'd say this game is definitely worthy if you were thinking about it. If you like Betrayal at the House on the Hill, this is going to be everything that you love about that and more. Just a few little snippets to kind of tell you what it's about. The haunts are in order. Like there's a story to the haunts. So things happen. You really like the story is developing as you play the game. So unlike regular Betrayal, where you might get a really complicated haunt the first time and you might get a really simple one on your 20th game, in this one you start with really simple haunts that are very much tied to the situation you're in. Okay? So that makes the game really good to learn. It makes for a good tutorial game. Second, whenever cards are added to the deck, the game tells you why. So it's about this one house. So this is very American Horror Story in that it's about this one house. Through the years, these same families keep coming to this house and investigating it. So, when something happens, let's say, I don't know, I find a crossbow or something.
Okay.
I can actually make that my family heirloom and name the card. And then in the future, when my descendants find that item, they'll be more proficient with it.
That's cool.
So they get a mechanical benefit, for this thing. Alternatively, if my character wins the game. And I say, and I'm gonna write a book, and so that nobody forgets the deeds that happened here on this day. And then we take this book and we put it into the event deck, and future generations can find this book and learn about what happened at the house.
And that offers some mechanical benefit as well, I assume.
Yeah. So or not even that it's a mechanical benefit, but when we find the book, we'll know oh, that's the book that, that he wrote when he, when this ghost possessed and killed everybody, right? There's lore, there's not innate lore to the items. The lore is created by the adventure.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So
Oh,
that's what makes it really cool, because it's not just it's not just that you find things, but that you actually put things in through the story.
oh, okay. And you basically make it your own, right? That's I think the
Hmm.
big part of legacy games, right? Is that it becomes your game, not the
Yeah.
same as everybody else's.
Absolutely. And this one really does become your game. So
Oh,
I'm very excited to play it again.
that's great. That's great. So, Brad, have you been doing anything else aside from playing some great legacy board games?
Yeah, well, I was so enamored with Betrayal Legacy that I decided to go watch Castlevania Season 2 on Netflix. I'm
Okay.
about halfway through that right now. It's interesting. It's longer than Season 1, and it focuses a lot on Dracula
Y-
and not as much on Belmont as you might expect,
Yep.
which is cool. It's a different side of the Castlevania story, which is kind of interesting. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious to see where that's going to go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the last thing I've been working on, licensing for Millennium Blades Collusion. So I sent out requests to a bunch of different publishers to say, hey, let us put your characters in promo packs for the new Millennium Blades Collusion project that we're doing. And I've gotten some good responses on those. So
I
that's been
see.
going really well.
Okay. Did you
And
get Yu-Gi-Oh?
just, no. I'm more board game publishers, fellow board game publishers.
I see. Okay.
Yep. But yeah, it's that's going pretty good so far too. So that's what I've been up to. How about you, Marco?
What I've been up to is back to my obsession with grinding because Marco's MMO corner is back. You know, originally this was about roguelike dungeon crawlers. Now it's about MMOs. Last week I talked about Ragnarok Online. This week let's talk about, Ragnarok Online Mobile, Eternal Love. And this week we're going to be talking about some Black Desert Online.
Well, that's certainly less of a mouthful.
Yes, definitely. Have you played Black Desert Online, Brad?
I like the idea of MMOs, but I don't have the time.
That's completely fair. I mean, as Overlord God of Level 99 games, I assume your time is quite precious.
It's pretty tight. But also, I like to consume different media, and to really get an MMO, you got to sink hours and hours into it. How long have you been playing Black Desert?
So, overall, I think I've spent around, give or take, like 15 hours on Black Desert over the past 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a lot of time, right? The main
That's a good amount of time, right? That's like 2 work days.
No, not for an MMO.
Well, yeah, but for like real people, lifespan time.
Yeah, okay, that's completely fair, right?
That's half of a human work week.
That in this
Well,
indeed
2/5.
Yeah, or something
Yeah.
like that, right? It's a decent chunk of time that I spent over the weekends playing it.
Yeah.
Mostly because there was an event that they did. Like this is like the ultimate way to rope people in because it's a pay to play game. It kind of
Mhm.
has like a pseudo subscription thing. But if you get to a certain level within the first 2 weeks of the trial, they give you the game for free essentially, and you don't have to pay
Huh.
to play it anymore.
Interesting.
It's a very interesting concept. Ultimately, I just want to take this time to talk about a few things about Black Desert Online. Specifically, that Black Desert Online takes grinding and makes it kind of fun. Because rather than the typical MMO thing of like, you click a thing and then you like skill rotation hotbar. WoW.
Yeah. WoW style.
Yeah, it doesn't play like WoW style. It plays a lot like Skyrim in third person. I think that's what it feels a lot like. So,
Mhm.
you move with WASD and you left click to do light attack, you right click to do heavy attack, and then like I don't even think there's like I barely even use the skill bar because a lot of your attacks are actually just tied to like fighting game-esque commands. So it's like if you press up plus F, you do a drop kick, or if you do like up plus right click, you do a different attack, and you have tilts to your
Mhm.
attacks and stuff like that. So the combat is
Kind of
actually
like what's that game that we played a while back? Absolver.
it's kind of like Abs Lover, except you don't get to customize your deck.
Sigh. Okay.
I'm sorry. You don't get to customize your deck. You basically get to play your character. So that's one thing. They made the grind a bit more enjoyable, which I think helps them because I want to talk about leveling systems in MMOs for like a minute.
Mhm.
It's basically I find that leveling up in MMOs is very rewarding. Should be very rewarding, right? Like
Yeah.
you level up, you get more stats, you get more skills, and all this stuff.
Yeah,
Black
get your new
Desert
spell every 4 levels, etc.
or yeah, etc. Right? Black Desert
Yeah.
Online doesn't do that. It's
Yeah.
It's quite a weird concept because Black Desert Online, leveling up doesn't actually give you stats or anything. All your stats are tied to equipment. So all leveling really does is just give you access to new skills, which don't even get unlocked by leveling because you have an entirely separate XP bar for skills. So
that kind of reminds me of Guild Wars, actually. Did you ever play Guild Wars 1?
No, I have not played Guild Wars.
So in Guild Wars 1, your max level was 20 in that game, and you did stat up to level 20, but the only real stats were your armor stats, and those were the armor was pretty well capped, so it was really just aesthetic once you got the top tier armor, which was only like tier 3 armor. But anyway, in Guild Wars, you whenever you got a level, they would give you a capture signet. And you could use that to go and steal a skill from a boss of your class. So it basically turned into Monster Hunter after you got a level 20, because you had to go out and find these exotic bosses and steal the skills from them.
That's awesome.
And then you had a reason to go hunt with the other players to hunt their bosses, because you still had to get a level before you could actually go cap another one.
Okay. That's interesting.
They got rid of it in Guild Wars 2, but it was a really neat system in Guild Wars 1.
Yeah, so I played Guild Wars 2. So this is why this sounds foreign to me. Like, what? Interesting. So in the end, my big problem with this is that it doesn't feel rewarding to level up in Black Desert Online. Like, because literally nothing changes about your character. A level 1 character can be as strong and effective as a level 50 character, right? Mm-hmm. Like, because not even equipment is restricted by experience levels. So, like, literally nothing is different, except for the amount of skills that you have access to. And ultimately, if you already found the skill that you like in, like, level 5, leveling up doesn't really open up your options. It literally just does nothing. And my big problem with Black Desert Online as well is how they do their EXP cliffing or, like, scaling. Because it took me, say, 7 hours to get from level 1 to 55, and then took me 7 hours to get from 55 to 56. Like, it is completely weird. Atrocious how this EXP system works.
They just break the curve. And
they just absolutely destroy the curve. There's no max level in this game, because the curve gets so steep that there is effectively a soft lock on how high a level you can be. Currently, it's at level 60, because apparently, according to people, to get from level 60 to 61 takes 4 months of, like, playing 5 hours at least a week. And I'm like, okay, no way, man. That's not happening.
Have you played Guild Wars 2, Marco?
I played it a bit, yeah. I'm not, like, super deep into it. I got, like, 2 hours into it or something.
Oh, man. You should really give it a little more time, because I think it's got a lot of things that you would like. So the level cap in that game is 80. And you get there, it takes a while to get there. But what they did in the game that was really cool is, first off, your armor and weapons are kind of prorated to your character. In that, like there's like a couple tiers of armor, and once you get the top tier armor, like, you've got it. There's not really much more you can, like, stats wise. Your stats get pretty balanced in the PvP side of things.
Okay.
Like in PvP, there's specific armors that you can wear, and the only changes you can make are aesthetic. Whereas in PvE, you can keep stacking up stats, more like Warcraft, and get really good. But when you go to, let's say I'm level 80, and I go to level 20 zone, the game actually prorates me back to level 20 and scales my armor back accordingly as well. So when I go to level 20 zone, I become a level 20 character. So even if I'm, like, cleared the whole game, when I go back to fight through some of the, like, to finish my map or to fight through some quests that I missed or something like that, I'm appropriately leveled to make that area challenging, or at least, like, interesting. It doesn't. I'm still strong for the area. I'm still a lot stronger for that area, because I do have better gear, like higher. I have, like, tier 5 gear when other people in that area have tier 3 gear.
Yeah, but you're not just, like, literally single left click.
But we're actually both level 20. Yeah.
Yeah, I see.
And so I can go back and play with people that are, you know, like my friends that are at a lower level, and that's something that is really cool in MMO that's one of my hangups, right? Because my friends are like, Brad, come play this MMO with me, and I'm like, you guys are level 60. It's like, it's going to take me a month to get to where you are, and by then you'll be somewhere else, and you don't want to come back and grind with me, because that's boring. But in Guild Wars too, if as long as you start in a different area than I started in, there's another quest that I can go on. Like I can complete that entire area, like that entire starter zone, and it's interesting, and I get rewards for it.
Ah, okay, that's interesting.
So it's a really cool way to have done things.
Okay, maybe I'll give it a bit more time once the Shine on Black Desert Online, the shine rubs off.
It won't be too much longer if you're already level 55.
I'm 56 now, actually. So
I see.
Yeah, at 56 you unlock your secondary class, and I forgot.
Okay.
My character is a berserker who wields 2 giant axes. Whatever, I don't care about that. Like literally, all of this has been building up to this moment because the awakened class of the berserker is called like the Iron something, the Iron Buster or whatever. And the entire point is that your weapon goes from axes to literally just a Mega Man Buster. So,
that's not even a linear progression. It's like axes. You'd think it'd go to like bigger axes or throwing axes, but it goes straight to a gun.
Yeah, and a hand cannon, a literal hand cannon. Your hand literally turns into a cannon, a la Mega Man style.
I don't get the connect there.
I don't get the connect either. I don't know why, but I literally picked this entire class just for that. Like, you can be a Mega Man character? Heck yes. So I'm doing the quest to become Mega Man, and hopefully I will report back and talk to you how great it is to jump and shoot. All right, so that's what we've been doing for this week. Hopefully you guys enjoyed listening to us talk about legacy games, MMOs, and Mega Man. Now, let's move on to our next juicy segment. Brad's segment, also known as the Pipeline.
Well, I guess this one's really more lore this week again, because I've been asked to talk about Chaons in the world of Indines.
Yes.
So, world of Indines is the world of Battlecon, Argent, Imperial Spells and Steam. If you don't know about Indines, you probably aren't listening to this podcast. But anyway, there's a little more obscure portion of this world, which is the planes. And at the far edge of the universe, there's the plane of chaos, which is still in the process of basically being born into the universe.
So it's new.
Yeah. So remember I was talking a little bit about worlds like we would call like the minus world that are in the process of dying?
Yeah.
Like disappearing into the void. There are other worlds that are being born from the start of the universe that are being created. And these worlds kind of lack form. They have incredible amounts of potential energy because they're connected to this kind of ultimate source of all things. And anyway, that's the plane that the Chaons come from. So they're a very young race. They are made of light and energy and ideas in a lot of sense.
Okay.
They're not quite like other things in the universe. But when they enter Indines, they become human. Just like everything else, because Indines is a material plane. Whenever a non-material creature comes there, they get turned into a human-like form. So that's why our Chaons appear humanoid when they show up in the world.
I see. Okay, so but that's not what they actually look like, right?
No, they're kind of like. I mean, they don't really look like anything because they're not from a material plane. So that would be difficult to explain, so I just generally say they're kind of like stars or balls of light or whatever.
I see. So they're basically like incomprehensible figures, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like to see
because they come from a world that's like they come from a plane that's purely like energy and thought.
Okay, that's pretty interesting. Though mostly like in the fan base, we usually just call them like they're basically Cthulhu creatures. Like that's how they seem
to some extent. That's kind of how we perceive them. I mean, they're inconceivable aliens. So Cthulhu is not not necessarily a bad comparison, but I would say unlike Cthulhu's, they're not like these giant world-devouring creatures that have lived since time untold. They're really more kind of whimsical.
So they're like wisps or fairies or something, like
to some extent. I mean, they have they operate on a different logic than the people of Indines do.
I see. So it makes them seem eccentric in comparison.
Yeah,
I guess
they seem really eccentric because they don't think about things the same way.
I see. Okay, I like that. So here's the big question, right? I
Yeah.
know that they manifest as humans. It just seems that like there's this preconceived notion in the community that Chaons are always female. Is this true or false?
So it's not really true. They don't really have a gendering, right? Because they're made of light and ideas. But in Indines, they'll manifest as one or the other because that's how it works. But we do have male form Chaons. Telthurius from Imperial Spells of Steam is one.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's so it's they're not really one or the other, but it is just a matter of form.
I see.
So perhaps it's random, perhaps it has to do with mental disposition, or
Nobody
like
knows
that.
Nobody
Yeah,
knows,
it's not well understood even by
see.
me.
Okay, perfect explanation. And sometimes I hear there are glitches, right? Certain Chaons appear with like tentacles for arms. Like, what's up with that?
They never come in exactly right. Even and so there's some that are really strange, like Lavanina from Argent has tentacles instead of one of her arms. She has a bundle of tentacles. So like was it Welsie has her eyes are different.
What do you mean her eyes are different?
She actually has like sheep's eyes. If you look really close at any of her artworks, they have these bars instead of pupils.
Whoa! I never noticed.
Yeah.
Wow. And Oriana has a third eye, right?
Oriana has a third eye. And Eerie actually has heart-shaped pupils in her eyes. And she also can't maintain her form very well, so she keeps switching.
Oh, and that's why she stance changes. Oh, lore.
Yeah, she has several different forms, and she kind of like as her mood changes, manifests different ones.
I see. And let me just guess. There is no real reason as to why Eerie is basically an anime magical girl.
There's reasons, but well, it's how would I explain it? So remember I said like they're all based on like they're made of what's the word?
Thoughts
made of like
and
light and ideas. Yeah. So Eerie is kind of built this idea of justice that is maybe not fully formed. But she manifests that as as being a quote unquote defender of justice in the universe. And so that's why she has that particular style. It's not just like what she's decided to be, but it's actually who she is.
I see. Okay, so I think that's something I need to talk to you about, right? Like, Chaons tend to have these, like, hugely, like, in my opinion, overpowered power sets, right? Because I didn't know that they tend to be, like, manifestations of certain ideas. But I guess it makes sense, like, immature justice is basically like a Saturday morning cartoon superhero, right? So, like, in a way, like what... Where do Chaons draw their power from? Like, if they're made of ideas, if they're literally the quote-unquote manifestation of a specific idea, like, how does that relate to their power?
So it's a lot of self-perception and a lot of like their own development. So yeah, so their powers could change over time as personalities change or as their own sense of identity becomes more solid. Mm-hmm. And because they're very like what would I say? Like very variable. They don't really have they haven't tapped into their full powers in a sense. So so someone like Eerie who kind of has a strong sense of what she is really powerful, but someone like Welsie who is kind of not certain about what she really is, just what she wants to do, has a much smaller power set.
So it's all about self-belief, I guess.
A lot of it is, yeah. So Welsie's kind of still in the process of discovering who she is, even in her 12th and 13th incarnations, traveling back through time to relive the same era over and over again.
Yep. So there are like at least a dozen Welsies in Indines, all at different periods of her life. You know, this brings to mind a certain thing. Like a lot of this stuff that you're talking about is specifically in terms of like how you are, like your power is deeply tied to how you perceive yourself or how you act. And the way you are in your personality essentially determines like what things you can do. That sounds a lot like the characters from Mystic Empyrean. Like
the Eidolons in Mystic Empyrean, which is an RPG that we did several years ago, have that same concept where they're really the products of their own identities. and they kind of grow and change over time through the actions they take. There is some relationship between Chaons and Eidolons. So that would canonically link Mystic Empyrean and Indines together. But those ties are not fully formed, even in my mind. So I can't talk too much about them here.
I see.
All I can say is that there is a link between these universes.
Okay. So is there anything else you want to say before we move on?
So I talked a little bit when you were asking me about like Illumis and the Rasps, how there are different kinds of creatures in that plane.
Yeah.
So we list Oriana as a Chaon, but she's not really a Chaon in the same sense that like Eerie and Welsi and Telthurius are. She's something a little bit different from that same world. And that's one reason that she's so much more powerful than the rest of them. But so there's still some mystery about Oriana's true nature and why she wants to conquer the entire universe.
I see. Is Oriana like the equivalent of like the Chaon Queen in that sense?
Yeah, in a certain sense. Like, she's kind of just recognized as the ruler of that entire plane.
It's because she's the strongest? Like, what's Chaon culture like?
Well, I don't know. I haven't delved too much into that because it's outside the focus of most of the story, right?
I see. Okay,
like things happen in Indines, so we look at things through the lens of Indines.
Yep, and to us, all it seems like is they're these just whimsical, magical light creatures who come in and do whatever the heck they want, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm excited. Oh, by the way, since I never hear about that like male Chaon, what's his name?
Telthurius.
Telthurius. What's his power set? Because I don't know what his power set is.
So he is kind of linked to connection. So he runs the railway, right? The Star Chaser rails, and is trying to bridge all the different worlds together.
I see. Okay.
So he's kind of a technologist. He develops things that everybody can use. But yeah, his kind of goal is to connect all the planes together.
I see. And that's why he has the power of teleportation or something?
Well, we haven't actually seen him like do stuff. We only know that he is in charge of this railway and that he developed the technologies behind it.
I see.
So
okay.
As far as what his actual like power set is, that isn't defined yet.
Good to know. Oh,
or isn't revealed yet, I should say.
Oh, one last question though, Brad.
Mm-hmm.
So Chaons are linked to a certain concept, right? So say Eerie is like childish justice, and Telthurius is connection. Does killing them result in that concept being affected in some way? Or
well,
no?
if you like other aliens, if you kill them, they just get banished back to their home plane.
Okay,
because they're not material creatures, so if you kill their material body, they just get banished out of the plane.
Okay, and then just come back after like a week or something.
It depends, but generally, yeah, they could come back eventually.
I see. Okay, so thank you so much for answering that question, Brad. I'm sure everybody's excited for Eerie and all the Chaons, specifically Eerie because people know she's coming. Okay, so this is really great, Brad, but we need to move on to the next segment. Are you ready?
Yeah. Go ahead.
All right, Starlight Change to the 99 questions, where we talk about all of your questions and then do a magical girl transformation to turn them all into glorious answers that can defeat the true evils. Brad, are you ready for question number 1?
Yeah, transformation. Let's go.
All right. Would you ever consider releasing a tabletop RPG rulebook set in Indines?
Yeah, we want to. We do. We've actually been talking a lot about this internally, and we've actually been kicking around a lot of ideas about it more recently. Like really, so in our marketing, we did this big marketing survey, right? And we found that about, I want to say it's something in the range of like 70% of our fans are also RPG players, which is a lot higher number than I expected. So that really, so thank you to everybody who filled out the survey. That really kind of tells us this is a thing that people want in a way that we weren't really certain about before. So we definitely want to push forward with an RPG this year for the world of Indines. Yeah. So we one thing, we are reprinting Mystic Empyrean 2nd edition this year.
Please.
That's something to look out for.
Please, Brad. Oh my god.
But
I'm
as far as the
sorry.
Indines RPG, Indines a pretty big place, right?
Yeah.
So we've been talking to ourselves whether we want to just do a smaller focus setting like Argent, or whether we want to do something that's more of a like world-spanning traditional fantasy RPG. And that I'm not really sure about. You know, an RPG is kind of defined by its focus.
Yeah.
So if we make a big world focus, it's very difficult to, you know, to give players that sense of identity, even
Yeah.
within this world. So I feel like it might be better to have kind of a core book and a source book, and say, you know, here's the rules for making a character, and your students at Argent, and or your, say, retrievers for the reliquary, or something like, you know, some narrow thing, so that the
Yeah.
missions and the story have a structure.
Yeah. I think that's true. Like, we can't just like list out everything in the world of Indines, list out how to make a character, and go like, create your own adventure. Like, I guess there has to be like a hook, right? Like in Dungeons and Dragons, the core conceit is that you are adventurers and you do adventures. That's it.
Yeah, well, the question when you do an RPG, it's always like, why don't I just take this world and play D&D in it? Right? Like,
Exactly.
why don't I just take the
Exactly.
world book and then adapt my D&D campaign to this setting? And that's a valid question, right? Because with the Grand Chronicle and with some of the other stuff we have, you certainly could build an RPG, just play an RPG in the world of Indians. So part of having that focus is that you can do unique subsystems. So like if we did, you know, like say the reliquary, we could actually have a system for like building your artifact collection and using those on future missions, and you know, getting ranks and clearances and stuff like that. That could be a big part of your character. If we did like Argent, you could actually build your curriculum and use that to
Curriculum?
learn spells, and, you know, take, you know, assessment tests and stuff, and that
Yeah.
would be how you advance your character.
Or maybe you just
So
become part of like the Heroes of Indines or something, like a mercenary group. And
yeah, so yeah, and you have to like hunt monsters, and the actual, you know, the actual process of monster hunting is well defined within the world.
yeah, like, you know, you have to find out what's a monster's specific weakness, specific kinds of weapons that the monster's weak against, or where do you even find the monster? Like, the monster just doesn't pop up whenever you want it to, right? Like,
Yeah. So that's why we're thinking of doing a more focused RPG rather than just a big, you know, play in Indians kind of game.
yeah, that makes sense to me. You know, in the end, right, like, this isn't really far off, right? Because the World of Indians literally started as an RPG setting for you. In Argent,
Yeah.
specifically, right?
Mhm. Yeah, that's why we were thinking of Argent as a first setting, because a lot of that, yeah, all that history and everything already exists from the original RPG.
Yeah, and I think that would be cool, right? Because you could have a system wherein you get to pick your curriculum, and there's literally like 6-something branches of magic, and you could just have like specific
Yeah.
abilities tied to whatever branch of magic you're part of.
Yeah,
It's
there's
so-
6 branches, and there's like 4 specializations within each branch, and then you've got things like clubs and extracurriculars
dating.
and all that stuff. Yeah, dating, all the
Yeah,
things you do in university.
yeah, heck yeah, that'd be great. Like, you know, you could be part of a club that's like, I don't know, it's like Haruhi Suzumiya. You're like part of the SOS club, and you just go around like trying to look at abnormalities at your school or whatever. Whatever. I'm excited. I'm excited. I'm really
Yeah.
excited. Yeah. Okay, Brad. Question number 2. Are you ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Will Seventh Cross be story driven like an Arkham Horror LCG or Pandemic Legacy? As far as I know, this is a very Brad question to ask. But as far as I know, yes? Question mark?
So we talked about it on the blog, a little bit. So if you check out the Inside Seventh Cross blog, you can read back about like the legacy components of the game. In general, it is probably more like the Arkham LCG, but probably not even like that. You take when you play through an entire castle, which is like 7 bosses that you can fight through, 4 to 7 bosses, and then at the end of that, the game resets. The only thing that remains is these heirlooms that you find, and those are items that will stay in the decks for you to find later. So it's kind of a roguelike progression. When I start Castle 2, I might find treasures or skills or items that were unlocked during Castle 1. But the game will not remember, like, oh, you killed this guy, so they can never show up again for the next, like 40 hours of gameplay. We didn't want that. We had too many interesting characters. So it's kind of balanced, right? You want death to be permanent, but you have all these cool characters. So what we did is we said, well, death is going to be permanent within a castle. So if a guy dies in fight 1, you're not going to see him for the next like 6 or 7 hours of gameplay. But after you finish that castle, like we reset things and it's a different adventure. So people can come back. And we thought that was the best way to make the game feel to make the game easy to jump into, and also not quite the like commitment of a 40-hour campaign. Instead, you get 8-hour campaigns.
Oh man. Okay, yeah.
So and then like,
sorry, sir. Yes. Huh? Go on.
Oh, I was saying like with story driven, it's about as story driven as you want it to be. Between fights, you get time tokens, and you use those to go and explore the castle. And you can use them to talk to NPCs, or you can just use them to shop, for example. So if you decide you want to be more story focused, you can go and investigate. You can use the key items to, research the castle or to unlock doors, or et cetera, et cetera. Or you can just say, all right, I'm going to buy this and that and that and that and that, and now we're going on to the next fight. So you unravel the story at your pace and your discretion.
Yeah, I see. I assume there's like a benefit to taking the story side, right? Like making the fight easier in some way.
Not necessarily easy. In fact, taking the story side might make the fights harder. That might be the benefit. You'll certainly, by taking the story, you'll unlock fights that you wouldn't unlock if you just rushed through it.
So that's how you find the secret boss fights.
Yeah, you get secret bosses and you get tougher bosses through the story paths. But I think my hope is that I will, with this game, encourage players to what's the word?
Explore?
Unlock the story for themselves.
I see.
I don't like a game that leads you by the nose through the story, right? Like now read this paragraph, now read that paragraph. Like I want it to be where the players are like, well, we could go to the next fight, but I really want to read the paragraph. And they choose to do that.
Yeah, okay. I think Brad, I think I like this game. Can I have it?
Well, hopefully in a few months, everybody can have it.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Last question, Brad.
Yep.
Hey, Brad, it's quite hard to get your games in Europe, especially Exceed. Any plan to open an EU store or changes regarding distribution here? In my opinion, right, like we've already partnered with some people in Europe, and we do have some distributors there.
We have our main European distributor is called SDevium. And so it's kind of a thing, right? In Europe, because the countries are all have different languages, and because the countries are more like the size of regions in America. So like in America, you release an English edition, everybody gets it, right? But in Europe, the distributors are distributing in like Italian only or French only or Spanish only. And so they really want an edition of their game if they're going to carry it. And so what a lot of these companies do is they'll come to me and they'll say, hey, Brad, can we make a Spanish edition of like, Pixel Tactics, or can we make an Italian version of Imperial? And we have tried to, like, historically we have been just selling them a license. It's like, yeah, here you can print Pixel Tactics, go ahead and do the translation, do the printing, do it all yourself. But because of their smaller regions, you can generally only expect to sell 1,000 to 2,000 of those units, and it's hard to print a game at that low of a quantity. So what we're doing now with Imperial, and hopefully with our future games, is before we go to press, like right now, this is happening right now, we built a translation kit, and we're offering that translation kit to regional distributors throughout Europe and Asia, so they can make their own editions. And then we print them all together. And by printing them all together, we get up to a run of like 10,000 units, and that makes it much cheaper for everyone. So by that method, we can actually get the game to all these regional distributors. So I guess what I would say is we're trying to make this easier for future games. And especially like with licenses, we're writing in to our licenses the ability to print these extra editions. So for future seasons of Exceed, you should be able to get them in different languages.
Ooh,
that sort of thing.
Spanish.
That's our hope.
Oh my gosh.
That's our hope. We'll see if it pans out, because with card games it's a bit harder.
Oh, because there's a lot.
So many changes. With Imperial, right? You just have to change the rule book because everything else is iconography.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
Yeah, but with Exceed, every card has text, and that all has to be changed.
Okay, well...
So we'll see how it goes.
Hopefully it works out right. Brad, before we end this question, what's the Spanish word for exceed?
I don't know, but I hope they would just keep it as Exceed, because it sounds really cool, even in Spanish.
Okay, I like that as well. So, that pretty much does it for this episode of Level Cap Podcast. As much as I would like to keep talking to you, asking you questions, Brad, you and I are busy men with busy lives and have to sleep. And I'm sure our listener also has a life to get back to right now.
Well, cool. Well, thank you for taking the time to listen to the podcast. It's been great, and thank you for being a fan.
Yeah, we really appreciate that you're listening to this episode of the Level Cap Podcast. If you like anything about the podcast, please tell us in the comment section down below. Every comment, every like, it means a lot. You know, I try to respond to everything.
It's especially relevant now because we're about to change format. So any comments that you leave us will be recorded and will be used in updating the Level Cap Podcast to a new format. So please tell us what you think, even if you've already told us before, even if your thought is just, oh, I like everything. Let us know, because we want to know what you like about the podcast, what you don't like about the podcast, what we can change in our upcoming format shift.
Yeah, because once we reach level 99, we will indeed level up and become better for you. As usual, it has been me, your host, Marco DeSantos, also known as Spaghetti Critic, and with me has been my wonderful, wonderful, wonderful co-host, also known as the God Overlord of level 99 games himself.
I'm rolling my eyes silently here. Brad Talton.
Brad Dalton. All right. Thank you so much. And don't forget your special action. And thank you, World of Indines. Thank you, and good night.
And as always, happy gaming.